Woodcutter's wisdom. On a serene hillside nestled between a thick forest and a sparkling river, there lived a humble woodcutter named Thomas. His home was a small wooden cabin, simple but filled with warmth. Thomas spent his days in the forest, chopping wood and gathering firewood to sell in the nearby village. Though his earnings were modest, he had enough to meet his basic needs. Despite his simple life, Thomas was content, always wearing a gentle smile. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the landscape, Thomas sat outside his cabin, watching the play of light and shadows on the trees. His faithful dog, Bruno, lay at his feet, content to simply be by his side. The woodcutter sighed, not from sorrow, but from a deep sense of peace. He had just returned from the village, where he had sold his wood for a fair price, and in return received a basket of fresh bread, cheese, and apples. As Thomas prepared his dinner, he thought of how lucky he was to enjoy such simple pleasures. The bread was warm and soft, the cheese creamy, and the apples crisp and sweet. He could hear the river murmuring nearby, the birds settling in the trees, and Bruno's steady breathing. Each bite of his meal was a reminder of how rich he was in life's little joys. There was no place he would rather be, no meal more satisfying, and no companion more loyal than Bruno. One day, while chopping wood deep in the forest, Thomas encountered a wealthy merchant who had lost his way. The merchant was dressed in fine clothes, but his face was lined with worry. He was searching for a rare gem to complete his collection, a quest that had consumed him for years. When Thomas offered to guide him back to the village, the merchant was surprised by the woodcutter's cheerful demeanor, despite his humble circumstances. Curious, the merchant asked Thomas, "How can you be so happy when you have so little?" Thomas paused, resting his axe on his shoulder. He smiled and replied, "I have everything I need. A warm meal, a roof over my head, and a friend by my side. I've learned that happiness isn't about having much, it's about being grateful for what you have." The merchant was taken aback. In all his years of chasing wealth and treasures, he had forgotten the simple pleasures that once brought him joy. That night, the merchant stayed in Thomas's cabin, sharing a meal as the woodcutter told stories of his life in the forest. The warmth of the fire, the simplicity of the food, and the peace in Thomas's heart made the merchant realize how empty his life had become. When the merchant left the next morning, he did so with a lighter heart and a promise to himself. He would stop searching for happiness in distant places and instead appreciate the blessings he already had. Thomas's contentment and gratitude had sparked a change in him, one that he knew would lead him to a more fulfilling life. As for Thomas, he continued his daily work in the forest, living each moment with gratitude and finding joy in the simple things. He never sought more than what he had, for he knew that true wealth lay not in riches or material possessions, but in the peace and contentment that came from appreciating the world around him.